Well, when I was at the film school, he came to teach for a term, I think. I'm not quite sure now, because I was making my graduation film, and it was a big thing because, you know, he'd made one of the greatest films that has been made in England and in the world, The Ladykillers. And he was a wonderful natural teacher. We looked at The Third Man, and that was revelation. I mean, you realised that you had looked, but you'd never seen just where things had been placed, the camera, the position of the actors within the frame, or that it was just revelatory. He was a natural teacher and wonderful to listen to. As I say, I didn't go to all his classes, and I was making the second part of the trilogy as my graduation film, which is called Madonna and Child. And I was away one weekend because I had flu, and he went to see it, and he came out of the cutting room and someone said, "What have you been to see, Mr. Mackendrick?" And he said, "A rough cut of Madonna and Child." And they said, "It's a gay movie, isn't it?" And he said, "Not at the moment." And I rang him many years later, and he roared with laughter. I said, "I can't tell you how often I've dined out on that story." I think all films that you see and love influence you, but in a deeper way than just trying to recreate them, because you can't do that. You know, he's a great filmmaker. That's all there is to it. But they come through you and they come out of you in a refracted way. Had anybody said to me when I was at 11 and I was taken to see The Ladykillers that one day, I would make films, which was, I would have said, yeah, pigs might fly, and I would use Alec Guinness saying, "Louis, Louis," because taken out of context, it's just slightly sinister. But they influence you in... the colour influenced me, because it's old three-strip Technicolor, and it's ravishing to look at. I mean, it is ravishing to look at. And the choice of the Boccherini is so sublime. It's just sublime. When I made Long Day Closes, I wanted it to be a sound, not homage, but a sound memory of the things that I saw when I was very young. You know, I mean, "The happiest days of your life" is the first quote. "Tap, Gossage," I said to Tap, "you're not introducing the film," which I adore. But I was taken to see The Ladykillers when I was 11, and I didn't really understand just how subtle it was, but I absolutely fell in love with it. And I remember my brother, my eldest brother, who was a docker, and they were out on strike, and he had no money. And he walked into town, and he said, "All I had was £0.50. That was the equivalent of 13 pence today." And said, "Do I go and have a drink, or do I go to the pictures?" And he looked across the road, and The Ladykillers was on, and he went to see The Ladykillers. I think it is my favourite of all his films. I love Mandy. It's very, very moving. But there's something so flawless about The Ladykillers. There's only one cut which doesn't work. When Herbert Lom says to him, this plan seems as though it was hatched in the booby hatch. And it cuts to Alec Guinness, who starts to turn, and then it cuts, and you go back to Herbert Lom with this very odd reaction shot. It's the only part of it that doesn't work. It's a very peculiar cut, but it's just sublime. It's about every member of British society who are failures. That's what it's about, really. It's about failure, and trying to get something which is golden and which will change your life. You know, it happens to be money in this case, you know, and they don't succeed. But it's about the nature of failure. It's gorgeous to look at, but it's quite dark colour. You know, the pastels are all given to the old ladies. You know, they wear pinks and yellows and, you know, especially Hypatia, who's got this pink coat on with this pink hat and a pink feather. You know, you think with someone with a name like Hypatia, she could not wear anything else. I love Alec Guinness as Professor Monks, but when he was offered it, he said to Sandy Mackendrick, "But this is Alistair Sim." And Sandy Mackendrick said, "Yes, I know, but he's not available." So he got those buck teeth and the long coat and said, "Fine," and the long scarf, said, "Fine, I'll do it." It's a very, very good performance, but I would actually rate his Charles I in Cromwell as equally good. In fact, it's the only good thing in that film. The rest of it is just so turgid. It's coma-inducing. But his Charles is really elegant, and that half stammer he's got. But then I also saw him on television in 1962 when he read from memory over 4 nights the whole of the 4 quartets, and that was stunning. Oh, she's absolutely gorgeous. I mean, as soon as you see her, you fall in love with her. I defy anybody not to fall in love with her. I mean, Sandy's told a very touching story at film school, because of course we watched The Ladykillers, and she was in her 80s when she made that film, and they were worried about getting insurance for her, and she said, "Mr. Mackendrick, I'll pay for my own insurance." And he said, "Of course you won't, Katie. Of course you won't." And they got her her insurance, and then it came out. And he said to I think the distributor or the producer, Michael Borkin, "Look, this is the only really starring role she's had. Could her name be above the title?" And it said, Alec Guinness, Katie Johnson in The Ladykillers, and she died. And his eyes just filled with tears. I think they were about Britain because they were made here, and they have only a partial view of Britain. But if you look at something like Mandy, she grows up in this very grand house, and she goes out to play, and the rest of it's bombed. It still hasn't been built on. That's quite extraordinary, and it's not done overtly or with. It's just done as a natural part of that child going out to play, but playing on bomb sites. So that period of film, for me, not just in England, but Hollywood as well, from, say, the mid to late 40s to the late 50s, there's a glow about them. I don't know what it is. I cannot explain it. But you look at them and there's just a sort of lovely feel, a texture to them. There's wonderful texture to them. You look at those dark shadows in Mandy, those interiors which are dark and cluttered, and that wonderful interior of the house in Ladykillers when all her friends come to have tea and they begin to sing, "Darling, I am growing old, silver threads amongst the gold." And he's playing a pianola. I mean, it's just good. There's a gorgeousness about it. It's very specific, but because it's specific, of course, it's universal. It's very difficult with that long line of comedies, because he does something which only really Robert Hamer does as well. There's a darkness in Count Hearts and Coronets. You never openly see it, but it's quite dark. But in The Ladykillers, it's a comedy with darkness in it, whereas you look at something like Sweet Smell of Success, and it's a drama with dark comedy in it. So I think Robert Hamer and Sandy Mackendrick were outside of that clique, but were very much part of it. And obviously were influenced by it and the kind of ethos that Ealing had. But in a way, they wonderfully subvert it in a very subtle, not a radical way. And it's only when you see these films at the second or third time, you think, my God, they're actually quite savage, but wonderfully funny as well. It's very significant that Robert Hamer made the greatest film comedy, Count Hearts and Coronets. Nothing can touch it. Much as I love Some Like It Hot, nothing can touch it. It is utterly perfect, and it's utterly perfect mainly because of Dennis Price's performance, not Alec Guinness's, which is very good, but Dennis Price is superb. But it's very significant that the links between Robert Hamer and Count Hearts and Coronets and Sandy Mackendrick and the Ladykillers is that they're about the nature of class. In Kind Hearts and Coronets, it's about revenge. You know, this class has robbed me of my right and I'm going to get it. And he does. And you want him to get away with all those murders. The difference with the Ladykillers is written by an American, William Rose, who had that story in a dream, was a complete understanding of not only the British class system, but the fact that at the end of the war, that class was beginning to fail. And all the people in the Ladykillers are all from different stratas of British society, and they're all failures. And the other thing that runs through all of Mackendrick's films, which is, I remember saying this to him, and he got terribly shocked. I said, the old woman, played by Katie Johnson, is the innocent which destroys everybody. And that is a theme that runs through all his films. It's the innocent which destroys. And he said, yes, somebody else said that. But it's really true. The greatest comedies have something more than just their surface jollity. And comedy, I suppose, makes real life bearable, because in other situations, of course, had you really, say you'd done The Ladykillers as a realist film, it would be immensely sad, because they're all failures. You know they're going to get caught. You know that they're going to get caught. Coming from the background he came from, you know, American, brought up here, went back to America, it gave him the outsider's view of Britain. Like William Rose. William Rose was American, but knew the class system. Obviously, he just absorbed it. And that makes you different. It makes you different. And the way he just underscores everything or subverts it. And who could be more delightful or lovable than Katie Johnson as the old woman? I mean, she's gorgeous. And she looks into that pram and goes to the baby, and the baby goes, ah! It's a wonderful visual joke, because from the moment you see that, you know it's not going to be a nice old lady, although she's lovely throughout. She is the innocent that subverts everything. I don't think the Ladykillers has dated at all, and I certainly don't think that Sweet Smell of Success has. The only thing that is weak about Sweet Smell of Success is the love interest, because the girl is dull and so is the boy. But the rest of it is savage and compulsive. But what's lovely about the Ladykillers is that it's got that coziness about it, but there's always something which is slightly different. They build that little nest of these criminals on complete lies. But what's wonderful is they believe the lies. You know, that's what's so lovely. And she's like some Edwardian spectre, you know, when she says, I'm shocked and appalled. And you know she is. You feel it. And you feel that they feel, well, yes, she is. We've really not behaved very well. And that's wonderful. The only bit that really doesn't work is the bit with Frankie Howerd. That's knockabout humour, which he doesn't really do well. But I can forgive him anything for having made the film.